in the room. Great. And how many have joined in the last, say, 18 months? Okay, great. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Olson. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters Roseville area and the current president. The Roseville area is made up of the cities of Roseville, Falcon Heights, Lauderdale, Little Canada, Maplewood, and North St. Paul. So quite a geography that we have. And we are the program, if you aren't familiar with the League, we are a volunteer grassroots civic organization with over 100 years experience educating, advocating, and working toward reforms to make our democracy work for all. If you're interested in learning more about the League, we have a table set up on the side over there, and see Ann Tony, who's our membership chair. She's raising her hand right now. Yeah. So stop in there. So this was a very difficult week for our state, especially for the residents of Minneapolis. So against that backdrop, today's topic, due process, is especially timely and important. Our program today is moderated by Susan Johnson, who's a Roseville Area League member and happens to be an attorney as well. And we're also joined by 3 respected community panelists who will offer their constitutional understanding of due process, examine its legal implications, and discuss how it's applied in practice. So let me say, we're so glad you're here today. We know there's much going on, and sometimes we just want to stay home. So we're glad you come out to learn more about all of this today. And without further ado, I'll turn this over to Susan.
I'll start with just a few housekeeping things. First of all, you have cards. If you have a question, feel free to write it down. There'll be people that will pick them up. They'll bring them to me. I will do the best I can to try and answer those questions or pose those questions, but it's a little difficult when you're in the process of doing this moderating to kind of be able to cogently read the question, make a good question for the panelists, but I'll do everything I can. And at the end of the program, perhaps people will still have opportunities to ask questions directly if they so choose to do. Due process is a really complicated thing. And the purpose of this program is to try and make it understandable and how it applies to us in a day-to-day way. I was puzzling over how to introduce the concept, and I thought of my 7- and 8-year-old grandsons who just got a Monopoly game at Christmas. Now, anybody who has siblings or has had children or grandchildren, nieces or nephews, have heard while you're playing the Monopoly game or any other game, it's not fair. Somebody didn't follow the rules. And the rules are set to make sense of things. Due process is to make things fair. It's a constitutional right. It is in the 5th Amendment of the Constitution, which applies to the federal government and its agencies. It's in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which applies to state, local, municipal governments. And it is really complicated because who gets due process? I'm not going to read the whole constitutional amendment. Oh, and by the way, it's also in the Minnesota Constitution as well. But the part that we're going to focus on is that a person shall not be deprived, any person should not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. I'm emphasizing any person because it does not say citizens. It says any person. Now, to complicate it even further, the Supreme Court and lawyers have made it complicated because it is complicated. There are 2 big bodies of due process. There's substantive due process. Substantive due process is the law itself, and it involves things like gay rights, right to marry, desegregation, rights of privacy. It's a big picture kind of right. We're not going to deal with that today. Too much to deal with. We can do that another time, but not today. Today, we're going to focus on substantive due process, or not substantive, procedural due process. Procedural due process is required of local, state, federal governments, and it protects the life, liberty, and property. It requires three things. It requires notice. It requires the opportunity for citizens to be heard, and it needs to be judged or heard by an impartial tribunal. It's applied in criminal law. It's applied in immigration law. It's applied in governmental operations. And we have panelists here today who will be able to talk about how it is applied in real life and how it impacts what happens to us. We have three panelists here today, very illustrious. We are really fortunate. And I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves and give a little bit of background about how their jobs, their position, how due process impacts what they do and what their organizations do on a day-to-day basis. After those introductions, we're going to work on some scenarios in terms of how due process operates or should operate in various situations that are real life situations for people that we can relate to. So without further ado, I will hand the microphone over.
Thank you. I'm Erica Scheider. I'm the chief of the Roseville Police Department. Get it even closer. There we go.
Gotta be at that angle.
So I've been with the Roseville Police Department my entire career. I started in 1997, so you can do the math and figure out how many years that is. But my entire career has been in the community of Roseville. Especially in my current job being the chief, I think I ultimately have a lot of responsibility in ensuring that our policies, that our training, and that the people that we're hiring ensure that due process is served. We're currently going through, we just finished a review of all of our policies. Again, this is the second time in 4 years where we went through all of them, looking at it from that lens of, are they fair? Are they equitable? Can we be doing things better? And what does our community demand of those policies? In addition, another thing that we're undertaking right now is going through statewide accreditation. This is a new process that just came to Minnesota. We were one of the first agencies that raised our hand and said, we absolutely want to look at accreditation and have an outside entity look at all of our policies, our procedures, how we do things, to see how can we do things better? Are there blind spots that we're missing, especially around due process and our work around equity? So a lot of different things going on, but I think the big takeaway for me is we're always trying to do better. There's always ways we can improve. There's always different policies that we need to be looking at, different procedures. At the end of the day, I think it comes down to just making sure that we're treating people with respect and making sure that we're listening to our community and building that trust with our community members. And obviously with everything going on, that's getting more and more difficult, but happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Alicia Granzi. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a staff attorney at the ACLU of Minnesota. I'm happy to hear that I'm both respected and illustrious as a panel today. I am feeling a little big-headed. Thank you so much for having me. The ACLU and the ACLU of Minnesota, if you don't know those, what that means, it's the American Civil Liberties Union. And so we are an organization that is dedicated to defending the constitutional rights and the human rights and civil rights of all people. The ACLU of Minnesota does work exclusively in Minnesota. But everyone here in Minnesota, we're there to defend. So generally, when we're talking about civil liberties and defending them, I'm suing people like the chief here. But I will say that I like the sound of this policy review. That sounds really good to me. So it's nice to hear that I might not have to do some work. That would be great because I am very busy right now. We're all very busy. And I'm really heartened to see everybody here, eager to learn and to talk about this really important issue during this time that is, I'm going to try really hard not to cry. That is so tough for everybody here in Minnesota. I'm going to pass it now.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Christine Tucci Osorio. I am the very proud superintendent in District 622, which is North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale, and part of Woodbury, Landfall, a slice of Pine Springs, a little bit of Lake Elmo. This is my 11th year now as superintendent in 622. Those who know me, I also spent most of my career in St. Paul Public Schools, about 19 years, so I'm very familiar with all that's happening there. And I was a longtime principal and assistant superintendent, cabinet member there. And I'm really honored to be here and have this conversation during such a difficult week. I have shed some tears. It's been absolutely like nothing we've ever experienced before, and it's really interesting. It's also very heartening to see our entire community just come together. And I will tell you just out the gate, my school district is about 76% students of color. People don't always realize that over on the East Metro. Very large immigrant population, 75 unique and different languages spoken by our families. And I will tell you one thing I've heard over and over and over from some of our communities of color, in particular, how amazed they are to see so many white people out there on the streets helping keep everyone else safe. And not only just that, but our police departments, our local police departments have been amazing right now. I can't even tell you enough what an honor it's been to work with them lately. And so as horrific as the last weeks have been, there's some really beautiful things happening in the middle of all that. And I'm glad to be part of the conversation today.
Well, I'm going to skip around. I have all this prepared. And of course, as soon as I hear what people say, I go, oh, I got to ask about that. And I think one of the huge things with due process that we're all
You
dealing.
hear it enough?
Pardon me?
It was too loud.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the huge things that we're dealing with is how do we as a community get government to listen to us? You commented that you want the community, listen to the community. How do I get my police department to listen to me? How do I get my school to listen to me? Do I call the ACLU because everybody listens to them? So, why don't we start with, may I use your first names? Is that okay? Okay. Christine, why don't you start with telling us, how do we get the school board to listen to us as citizens when we're concerned about policies and procedures?
Well, I would say the first thing I always recommend, because a lot of times when there's many calls that come to the district office, and if it's a parent with a concern for their child, we always say start with your principal, because if they don't even know that you have a concern, it's hard for them to address that. And it's not a gatekeeping method. It's just that those are the folks who are best in position to be able to address certain specific issues, right? As you know, we have our public school board meetings and we have our public comment period. We welcome public comment. Public comment is a time for people to bring up issues that they're hearing about in the community. I would also say to get involved. There's opportunities to be on committees and learn more, engage more. But there's sometimes people show up at public comment with things that they heard on social media that we tend to hear more from public comment from people who have a lot of misinformation about how school districts run. So my first advice is always find out what is happening. And so engage. You can always send emails. We respond to everybody. We even have an anonymous tip line. And I will tell you that anonymous tip line is on our website. It's used by students, staff, families, community members. It's responded to immediately. That message goes to a lot of people and we read them. And we always say, if you put an anonymous tip, please give us a little information so we can get back in touch with you if you need a reply back. Because if we don't have enough to go on, it's hard to follow up. But we have a lot of ways to engage. First and foremost with every school site, but also through those other committees and structures, and also public comment at school board meetings. Listen in. If you don't want to come, you can watch them online. You can even watch recordings of previous school board meetings and learn more what we've been focusing on. But that's probably the best way as far as having the community just in general communicate with our schools.
How about you, Erica?
That's what you were thinking, Jane?
What?
That's what you were thinking it was going to be like?
What?
That's what you were
I think you're
thinking?
getting interception from another radio signal somewhere. Or on the Zoom, maybe? That could be something. Good thinking. I forgot the Zoom is happening.
I would echo that same thing. It's about getting involved, reaching out to your elected officials, to your city leaders. I can speak at least for Roseville, and I think it's probably the same for all of the other agencies in the area. Nobody screens my emails. When somebody sends me an email, it's coming to me, and I want to hear from people. And I have some people that email me more frequently than others, and that's okay. But if there's concerns, we need to hear about it. And I know sometimes people are reluctant to show up at a public meeting. It's a little bit intimidating, or to send an email to the police chief or to the public works or wherever it is. But that's your voice needs to be heard, and we're not going to know the concerns of the community unless you're reaching out. The other thing that was mentioned is getting involved. There's a lot of commissions in the city. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. There's a lot of kind of grassroots organizations as well. So a lot of it is just showing up and finding a way for your voice to be heard. But the easiest way, you can always send an email or pick up the phone and call.
Tell us about citizen involvement with policy and procedure review. Are citizens involved and how?
I'll start with our policy manual is about 850 pages. So there isn't a lot of policy or community input on most of them, just because they're dictated already by state law, by federal law, and just the post board. But when we're making any kind of major change to our policy, we try to engage the community. We've had, as an example, when we were looking at drones, we got our multicultural advisory committee to get involved. We also went out to the high school and talked to some of the students. I can't remember what group it was, but one of the civics groups at the high school, and sat down with the students to hear about their privacy concerns around drones. And then we had public comment. So anytime there's a major policy, we're trying to hear from the community. Another example is a number of years ago, we changed our traffic stop policy in Roseville. We do not stop for minor equipment violations. And that really came out of what we heard at the Imagine Roseville, which was community forums that were held. And so your voice does matter. Sometimes you have to get out and go to more than just one meeting, but at least for us, whenever we have a major policy, we're trying to do our best to get that information out, having public comment at the council meeting so that people can weigh in. But it could be as simple as just an email to getting input through emails. But typically, any major policy, we're doing our best to get out there and get that input.
I can add as well from the school district, yes. So our policy manual is not that long, I will assure you. But our policies are reviewed pretty regularly. Oftentimes they come up for revisit when there's a change in statutory language or even just references within the statute. But even if it's a minor change, we use that as an opportunity to review the whole policy. If you're following along with our school board meetings, all of our policies, whenever there's a change, even if they're small, we have 3 readings of them, public readings. The first happens in a study session with our school board members, and those are open to the public meetings. they're not the ones you see on camera, but they're also still open to the public. And we kind of revisit the policies and have our conversations. They then get read aloud again at a public board meeting, and then again a month later at another public board meeting. And the reason for that is so that anytime there's proposed changes happening, people can say, wait a minute, I saw that. I want to look into that a little more. I want to ask some questions, or I want to provide some feedback. All of the work within those policies does take place within different committees and structures. We have a curriculum advisory council, for example. If it's academic related, it'll always go through that. We have a citizens finance committee, financial conversations that happen there. We also have advisory committees for special education, community education advisory committees, early learning advisory committee. We have a lot of different groups that are involved, and so policy work will often get the first reviews in those areas, and then it'll work its way through the public meetings. And so we definitely encourage you that way. If you've only been tuning in to school board meetings online and you saw something that caught your attention, you can pull up that policy, read it, and if you have questions or feedback or input, there's a whole 3-month process that it takes to get that policy passed through. So there's a way for people to be engaged and provide their input on that.
In recent days and weeks, and this one is to Alicia, it seems that policies and procedures, especially on the federal level and on the state level, have changed rapidly, and it's questionable about the due process that has been followed. Alicia, can you comment on that?
That's a big, thanks, Susan.
A big ask.
Certainly we have seen, particularly from the federal government, an unwillingness to provide due process to, quite frankly, everybody. And it is a huge problem. I think I'm still thinking about how to fix this, or how to think about it. How do we get past this moment? How did we get here? And how do we move forward? So many Minnesotans disagree with what the federal government is doing and how they're doing it. And so it feels very hard to give good advice about how to fight a government who isn't listening to the people. Normally, I would say follow the sunshine laws, follow the open meeting, go to meetings like the chief and the superintendent have said. Go do those things, make your voices heard. Every single time a government agency makes a rule change, you have input. You can do that. In Minnesota, we're lucky. We have good laws, like good governance laws. The Data Practices Act and our open meetings laws provide us with a lot of scrutiny of our government agencies. But we are facing an unprecedented time where our state protections aren't protecting us, and we, get out in the street. The way that you can. Obviously, not everybody has the same abilities or time. But we're in a time where we have to act together and make our voices heard, not necessarily through some of the ways that I, as an ACLU lawyer, would normally advocate, go to a meeting, call your representative. Do those things too. Obviously, keep doing that. Keep putting the pressure on. But we have, I think, come to a moment where some of that is not going to be enough. And then also call me and I will sue them. I shouldn't make that promise. That is, we kind of act as a watchdog. That's kind of our function. And we are one piece, you are one piece, they are one piece, and we all have to figure out how to do it together. I don't know if I'm even, am I hitting the question?
You don't have an answer.
I don't have an answer. I've said that like a lot of times in the past couple of weeks. I don't know. And that feels scary, but I'm also hopeful, and I'm going to tell you why. We are at a place where we can start thinking about how to make real change because we have seen that the system we have let it come to is vulnerable. And we can, as a community, it may not feel easy, and it is not, but we can think about what's going to come next. And that is kind of cool. At least that's my glass half full silver lining answer.
It is really hard to grapple with all of this. And so please indulge me if I'm a little not as facile with the questions as I might be. But I'm interested at this point in terms of discussing protesters at ICE, ICE enforcement events, what citizens are doing. And specifically, I would pose a question to Christine in terms of your students. What happens when students protest? What are your concerns? What are the policies and procedures in place? I'm sure that there is a difficult balance between supporting students and keeping things safe for everyone. If you would address that, I would appreciate it.
Happily. It's a really, really relevant question right now. If any of you were in downtown North St. Paul on Friday afternoon, we had 500 students walk out of North High on Friday afternoon. And high school walkouts are not new. They've happened for generations, right? We have them every couple years for this cause or that. I remember the Parkland school shooting in Florida. We had walkouts then. This is so different. It's so different. I will tell you that the most important thing we do is we really work hard to know every student in our buildings. And I'm not kidding when I tell you we know our students. We know when they're going to walk out, when they're planning something, so we can give them some guidance. We have standard walkout policies and procedures. We use them every time. We whip it out again. Oh, dust off the things. Let's do this again. Our students, we respect students' First Amendment rights. We allow students to express free speech. We don't punish students who leave school if they walk out for a walkout and then want to come back in. We don't close the doors. I've heard some districts doing that. We don't do that. They can come back in. We don't count you as present and excused during that period of time because you have to remember if we have a walkout, against ICE, we could also have a walkout defending Trump or whatever. We can't pick sides on how we're going to have accountability for these types of things. Our number one job is always safety, and our principals are really good at trying to convince kids to have the walkout, just walk around the school so we don't have to worry about you guys out there. This time our students wanted to walk to the police station in North St. Paul. And if you know where North High School is, it's not very far away. But working with our law enforcement officers there, they literally cleared off a parking lot at City Hall, got the cars out of it. So when our kids got there, they had a place to gather. They even blocked off a block of North St. Paul by that snowman so that our kids could come and gather. And we had staff, even the people who work in the district education center, myself included. In fact, it was in the Star Tribune if you look at Friday evening. But we all had vests on. And I was not worried about our students at all. We know our students. I was worried about agitators or outside folks who might come in and try to cause trouble there. But it was beautiful and it worked really well. But we did have a couple of parents upset, called in, one who called me just furious. Why are you promoting this, your liberal agenda? And I was very clear. We don't promote walkouts. Our job is to educate students, but we do respect students' right to free speech, and our goal is safety, and we are very clear that when all the students walk out, even the teacher whose entire class left, we make sure that teacher stays there, because if there's one student who needs to be there in class, we don't want to be accused of following the wave and canceling classes when we shouldn't have. There might have been somebody. But I want to, those are all the things that we work through. But our number one job is safety. And we try to do a lot of work with our students about, your voices will be heard better if you can remove the F-bombs from all of your charts. You can't always make it happen, right? Hell, we want to say it ourselves, but just trying to help keep things safe. And that's how we handle student protests. And that's what's been really our focus right now, is making sure kids stay safe. We had a walkout at Tartan High School right before winter break, protesting ICE. And I imagine they might keep coming, but we're trying to listen to our students and support them.
I'll pose the next question to Erica, and that's the same question about protests, but this time the broad range of community protests, what you do to handle a large protest, what your concerns are, what you view as rights and responsibilities. And maybe you could go beyond that. If somebody is detained by one of your officers, what's the procedure? How does that work?
So when we have any kind of gathering or any kind of large event, whether it's a protest, whether it's a rally, whatever it might be, safety is what our priority is. We want everybody to go home safe at the end of that event. Hopefully, with a lot of events, we don't even need to be there. So that's the first thing is, we're not going to just automatically go because there's a bunch of people. Even with the school ones, and I think next week there's one at Roseville, we'll be there if they need us, but we're not going to insert ourselves in unless there's a public safety need. But certainly when things get to the point that we're concerned about safety, we're going to come in. One of the first things we're going to do is try to talk to the organizers, whoever might be that a leader or a voice for that community, to see what we can do on the front end to prevent any kind of issue, any kind of things from escalating. Again, we're not going to wait until things get out of control. We're going to try to look at it from what can we do to keep this peaceful, to get everybody home safe. We want people to express their views, their concerns, and to be out there. But there definitely is a line when crimes start occurring, when people start getting hurt, then we're kind of stuck in the middle that we've got to take action. We need everybody to go home safe. And to your point, if we're detaining somebody, I will tell you that's kind of the last resort. We don't want to start making arrests. We're going to do everything we can to disperse the crowd, try to talk to the organizers to help them convince folks to go home. But there is a time where things start to get out of control that we're going to have to take action. In Roseville, we're going to be calling in an outside agency. Realistically, like today, we have 6 officers working. We don't have gas masks for most of our officers. We don't have riot gear. And so we'd be calling in Ramsey County to come in. So the last resort is making arrests. Instead, we want everybody to go home, to disperse. Most importantly, we just don't want anybody to get hurt. So that's kind of our priority as we go in, and everyone is a little bit different. But I can tell you, especially we've had these conversations with our sergeants, with our command staff. We just want things to remain peaceful, and we're going to do everything we can on the front end to keep things from escalating. And that can be tough when you have outside agitators coming in or people that have a different agenda than maybe the group gathering. It does make it difficult, but that's going to be our goal going in there, is how do we ensure the safety of everybody that's here today?
Alicia, can you give us some good advice?
I mean, I can give lots of advice, specifically about protesting and observing. I'm going to say there is certain activities that are protected by the First Amendment and Minnesota's constitutional equivalent. Everybody should also be very excited about the Minnesota Constitution because it's better. It provides us more protections. It does. So essentially, when you are protesting or observing, you have the right to assemble, to petition the government for about grievances, and freedom of speech, right? So you can say what you want, and that includes F-bombs, which thank goodness for me. You can call people names. I don't like doing that, but it happens. What you can't do is you can't threaten people with imminent bodily harm. You can't threaten people. That's not protected by the First Amendment. There's certain types of behaviors that are also protected by the First Amendment, right? It's not just talking. You are allowed to be on a public street and to observe law enforcement and to record them. You can't interfere with a police officer trying to do their job. That is not protected by the First Amendment or Minnesota's constitutional equivalent. That doesn't mean, like I'm not going to tell you what to do. What I can do as a lawyer is tell you what rights you have. So no, you don't have the right to insert yourself between a person and an ICE officer. You don't have that right. In response, though, the ICE officer is still bound by the Constitution, theoretically, and they can't engage in excessive force. Like you still also have what's called a Fourth Amendment right, which protects your right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And that would be a seizure. Use of force is usually thought of as a seizure. And that applies to local law enforcement. It's ICE agents, any kind of government agent is bound by that. The government can regulate what we call time, place, and manner of your protesting. So they can say, you know what, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You can't have a noise parade. As much as I love the videos of the shark with the tambourine, I don't know if people have seen that. It's wonderful to behold. A government is allowed to do that, to restrict how you're protesting, when you're protesting, and where. But they can't do that in a discriminatory manner, right? Like Christine said, you can't say, oh, well, the no ICE protest is fine, but the no Trump is, but Trump is, they can't do it, right? If they want to say yay Trump, that shouldn't be on video. There can't be discrimination in viewpoint when the government does regulate speech and protest. So I guess, that's the constitutional foundation of what you're allowed to do. When you do go out and protest, kind of general good practices are to go out with a buddy, and just, as a general tip, have a plan for what you're going to do and where you're going to do it. And always have or keep in mind the ACLU and organizations like ours for if you do feel like your rights are being violated. I think that is a pretty comprehensive set of advice.
Let's hear from Christine in terms of, have you had occasions where you need to interact with federal law enforcement regarding your student population?
Absolutely. I think over the years, we've dealt with the FBI, we've dealt with Secret Service for internet sex trafficking cases. I've even gotten a call from Interpol one time. Yeah. It was a student had been apparently posting suicidal ideation online. Another student in Canada saw it. They called their local police. Interpol got involved, and yes, we've had a lot. And in my 30 years, I will tell you, I've often said it. I've almost seen it all, but almost is never all, because I will tell you, this has been a really different kind of week. I'll give you some examples of what we've experienced in the past week in District 622. aside from the normal Monday morning returning from winter break stuff, I think by 11 a.m. we had 4 custody battles we were caught up in the middle of, and things like that. But that happens. What was very different this year, I think it was Tuesday morning, I got a rattled phone call from one of my principals who had a secretary who had driven to work that morning, by the way, U.S. citizen, but perhaps living with, I think her parents might be undocumented, I'm not sure, had driven to work 6:15 in the morning and had been followed by ICE agents. She assumed they were because they were masked and unmarked vehicles, and turned down different streets to see if they were really following her, and they were. Got all the way to the parking lot at 6:15 in the morning. It's still dark out and not a lot of people there yet. And they boxed her car in all around her with vehicles and just sat there. She was terrified, didn't know what to do, was afraid, should I get out of my car? But they weren't trying to detain her. They were just staring at her, intimidation. She finally got out of her car, went into the building. And of course, my principal calls me and goes, I'm just giving you a heads up in case I get thrown in jail today because I am not letting this happen. I said, of course not. But again, I had a teen driver, a Hmong boy, drive to school this week. He's a U.S. citizen, his parents are, and even his grandparents are. Driving to school this week, same thing happened. Followed on the way to school, turned down streets, trying to see if they're really following him. Got into the parking lot, did the same thing, boxed him in, and then pointed and laughed at him, and then he went into the school terrified. I had a school board member we've had a lot of students in the neighborhood of Landfall, which is a mobile home community where we have a lot of Latinos. And we've had a number of things happen. We also, as the school district, have adult programs. We had an adult English student learning English in our ESL classes. And we offer a satellite class at Landfall who had gone up to the office there to pay her rent and was picked up by ICE. Another one of our adult students saw it and was able to call our program lead, who called me because we were able to look up the person, because the other question I have is this a parent also, right? It was a parent of elementary school age children at Carver Elementary. And we had to activate all the phone trees to try to find other people for those kiddos to go home to, and emergency contacts. We've been encouraging families to have extra emergency contacts and whatnot. So a school board member was also, we've had several parents just kind of patrolling Landfall in particular, and other neighborhoods, Rolling Hills, Mobile Home Park, and 29 Pines, and others have been real hot spots for us. And just letting us know when there's a large ICE scenario, because we also have students who go home, noonday students who go home, the pre-K students who go home only half day to school, and they go home in the midday routes. And, we have vigilantes, parents out there helping us keep an eye out, because if there's a big gathering of ICE agents, we're notifying that bus, skip that stop right now and come back later. We don't want kids getting off those buses and having to be in the middle of all this. A school board member was out there early yesterday morning, and called me really shaken because he had been just kind of doing some of that, vigilante kind of stuff, keeping an eye on things, and had stopped to talk to someone and was watching them. And then he decided to follow some of these ICE agents as they were leaving that neighborhood. He was following them, and he followed them all the way to his own home, which means they had looked up his license plate, looked up where he lived, and then he got there and he got to his home, and they then took out their cameras and were filming his house, his car, and pointing and laughing at him. 3 hours later, he texted me that his parents got visited by those same ICE agents. They figured out who his parents were, white male, by the way. And so there's a lot of people right now I had a Somali bus driver just say, I can't do this job anymore, also a U.S. citizen. Most of our Somali community are U.S. citizens, for sure permanent residents. And we've had a number of folks who've just stopped coming to work. We had 2 nutrition service people stop coming to work. I've had a number of teachers. And so we're really seeing an impact, and I mean really seeing an impact, student attendance, staff attendance, but it's not, and we have some parents who, when I put out communication to the broader community, you'll say, stick to education, stop sticking your nose in politics. I'm like, this is about education. We have 2 goals in our district with regard to all of this: safety of students, staff, and families, and learning. And these are things that are very much impacting learning right now. And so just letting you know, we're right now calling every family of students who have been missing school to find out what they need. I know there's some who really want to go to online learning, and we are working on options for those who really need it, but we also know that's terrible for kids. It's terrible for kids. Some families are saying if I could have door-to-door pickup service so that I don't have to leave my house, and so we're starting to talk about what it might look like to help get kids through carpool networks and neighborhood watches and things just to help people be safe. I've always said to all of our sports coaches and everything, evening events, your teen drivers, make sure you walk them to their cars. Do not send kids out into the parking lot, especially after dark by themselves, because a lot of our older students look like adults. And it's just a really scary time right now. So I echo that feeling of, we don't know what we're doing right now. We're living in the moment and trying to. I felt like all last week was a whack-a-mole. I have a feeling it's going to be even more so this week. And I will tell you, when we have some action items for community members to lean into, we will be spreading the word through this organization as well. So please stay tuned.
Frightening, totally frightening. Erica, help us out here. Tell us how, as a chief of police of a wonderful suburban city, what kind of interaction are you having with federal law enforcement, particularly ICE and border control? You've just heard what Christine had to say, and I'm sure you've observed some pretty crazy things too. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so the first thing that I'll say is we work closely with a lot of federal partners, and not ICE, but we work closely with a lot of different task force. The people we work with are professional. I can't say enough about the different criminal justice agencies that we worked with. So I want to separate that because we do work closely with different federal partners, and we need those relationships. Your actual question of how much involvement or how much interaction with ICE, it's zero. I haven't talked to a single ICE agent. I haven't had anybody call our office. They've been invited to a number of meetings that I sit on. They have not participated. So there is little to no communication whatsoever. And I think that that's pretty common if you talk to other chiefs in the meetings I'm in, even at people in bigger cities, in higher positions, there just is no communication. So we've had very little in Roseville, very little interaction. And um, we haven't been called to any scenes. We are hearing about them with activity, but at least the ones in Roseville have been, it sound from what I'm hearing, are pretty quick. They're usually gone. We're hearing about it afterwards. But as far as contact, I haven't talked to an ICE agent. I don't, maybe 20 years ago, I might have ran across one, but I can't even remember ever talking to it. It's a very separate, they have a very different mission. And so there really is no overlap. And even with everything going on, I know there's been talk about maybe we can get it in the same room and work through some of these, and there's zero communication from what I'm hearing throughout law enforcement, and especially the local governments.
If there is a situation like Christine described where somebody's boxed in, feeling that they're followed by masked, unmarked cars, what do you suggest the citizen do?
So if somebody doesn't feel safe, they feel like they're being harassed, they absolutely should call 911. We're limited. We can't interfere as well. So, but we can certainly come out and make sure that there's a legitimate reason and that there's some kind of legal process or some kind of, whether it's a warrant or some kind of legal paperwork that gives them that right. I will tell you that is difficult right now. But certainly, if somebody is surrounded by a car, they're not sure what's going on, we absolutely want them to call 911. I just caution that we have limitations too. We'll make sure that they're safe, that there's a reason that, yep, these are federal agents, they have a right to be there, but they do have jurisdiction. And so, besides coming out and making sure that they're who they say they are, we're going to be limited. But certainly, if somebody feels unsafe, we want them to call 911. We will certainly respond. And that's kind of what we keep telling the community. I don't have all the answers, but if you call 911 because you don't feel safe, we are going to respond and we will do what we can within our legal authority, but it is pretty limited.
If I could add, we've been telling teen drivers too, if you're really unsure and you're scared, drive to a police station. At least you're on the move. And if you're on the move and you're on a road somewhere, find a police station and drive there if you feel like you're afraid.
Probably good advice for all citizens.
Yeah.
Alicia, I'm going to ask you to comment and kind of elucidate for our audience the type of warrants, administrative warrants versus judicial warrants, and why that makes a difference. I think that is pertinent to protesters, school districts, for everybody to know a little bit more about what powers do ICE agents have.
That's a really good question. One of the foundational principles of the Fourth Amendment is the warrant requirement. What does that mean, Alicia? That means that in order we presume that a law enforcement officer, if they want to search you or arrest you, they're supposed to get a warrant. And a warrant is signed by a neutral magistrate, so a judge, and it has to describe, I'm feeling really legal jargony here right now, sorry. It has to describe with particularity, the reason that the law enforcement agent believes that this specific person or this specific place is related to criminal activity. So it's highly individualized and it's supposed to be kind of a check and a balance on law enforcement. So a law enforcement agent has to go to a judge and say, hey, judge, I think that Erica has committed a crime and I would like to arrest her because of all of these facts. And the judge says, I don't know, maybe, and reviews it and then says yes or says no. Whether or not in general practice, I think judicial warrants are really getting the scrutiny they need just on a daily basis is another question. That's the process that we're supposed to use. So ICE agents are not usually getting a judicial warrant. What they have sometimes is called an administrative warrant. And an administrative warrant is essentially just a piece of paper that says, I, as an ICE officer, want to arrest this person because I think they might be a non-citizen. Yep, basically. And there is not that same kind of independent scrutiny that you would see, again, with a judicial warrant. ICE agents aren't even really using warrants at all right now, which is a problem that, it's statutorily, rule wise, they're supposed to be using arrest warrants and doing certain inquiries like, is this person a flight risk? And, doing this analysis, they are not doing that right now. I'll talk about the differences of what a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant will get you in terms of access. So ICE agents can be in public spaces, right? Anyone who it can, like in a public space, outside, in the public area of a library or a restaurant, ICE agents can be there. They don't need a warrant for that. They do need a warrant, a judicial warrant, right, signed by a judge to go into private areas, to go into someone's home, to go into an employee-only area of a restaurant or a library. They can't just go into those places, even if they say, oh, I have a warrant, right? They have an administrative warrant, if they have a warrant at all. And sometimes they're just holding up pieces of paper. So if somebody says, that they have a warrant to come inside, you need to look at that warrant and see who signed it. It should say, Ramsey County Judge, Hennepin County Judge, Federal District of Minnesota Judge, Judge. Otherwise, they're not coming in. And the way that you can do that is you can say, I'm not going to let you in unless you tell me you have a warrant, and I'm not going to open the door. You can slide the warrant under the door. They absolutely can't force their way in. If they do have a warrant, you're going to have to respect that warrant, like any law enforcement agent. So, if an ICE agent or any other law enforcement agent says, I have a warrant, or that says, I want to come in, you ask for that warrant and you look at it. That's just good general advice.
I'll comment here or just read some information that I researched and located about protected areas. Interesting comment that doesn't seem to ring true. We have special responsibilities to ensure that access to the courthouse and therefore access to justice, safety for crime victims, and equal protection under the law is preserved. You may recall that there was a judge in Milwaukee who assisted an immigrant, allowed the immigrant who was not in her courthouse for immigration procedures, but for other things, allowed that person to leave through not the generally used public door. There was a trial. She has been convicted, the judge has. And yet from Homeland Security, we are seeing brochures, policies that executing civil immigration enforcement actions in or near a courthouse may chill individuals' access to courthouses and as a result impair the fair administration of justice. So there's obviously a dynamic where what is written or what is policy, and the policies are changing. They're changing weekly, daily, monthly. They're changing rapidly. But there is this problem with change that happens very quickly and the lack of protection. Other protected spaces are things such as schools, healthcare facilities, places of worship, places where children gather, social services establishments such as crisis centers and domestic violence shelters, place where disaster or emergency relief is given, funerals or gravesides, or a place where there is an ongoing parade, demonstration, or rally. Alicia, you want to comment on reality versus not?
So we're seeing ICE essentially having changed this policy to avoid doing enforcement at sensitive locations. And I mean, it's legal. It's lawful for them to do that. Is it right? I mean, that's a different question. So I think this is one of the things that we all can write down and think about as to changes that we all want to see in how we move forward. Thinking about how we actually want to protect those sensitive locations in future from law enforcement, not just ICE now. How we want to think about that. I think something I've been thinking about, and I just want to talk about it, is a lot of our laws are kind of norms. They're not written down. They're not, in a book. And we've just been expecting people to respect them. And norms are important. A lot of what we do every day is a norm. A handshake is a norm, or a hug, or the things that we say to each other. Those are norms. But things like this, things that are so important, like what can happen at a school? Is that something we just want to leave to chance? I also think I've been thinking about this due process also just generally. In anticipation of this event. And on Friday morning, I went to 34th in Portland, and then I walked to George Floyd Square. And I thought, these two things are not separate. These two things are the same. When we have the concept of due process that is so amorphous, it allows there to be different levels of process for different types of people. And that is something that we all need to remember today, next week, and a year from now. And thinking about due process, we kind of say, oh, it's due process. Well, it's the process that is due and that is reasonable and what we as a society allow. And too often when one group of people becomes other, it is easy to say those people don't deserve this type of process. And this is how we got here. It's a little bit of a rant, but I've been thinking about that a lot. I lived in South Minneapolis when George Floyd was murdered. And that time felt strangely more hopeful than today. It felt like something was going to change. We were mad, we were upset, but somehow this was going to move things. And what we saw instead was a backlash. And here we are in the backlash. And 6 blocks or whatever it is, someone else was murdered with no process. Or I shot and killed with no process. Because it is easy to say that this person doesn't get this process.
A question from the audience was, can our cities enact ordinances for ICE to not be allowed on city or school properties? That coincides with the concept of a sanctuary city. And I believe that Roseville, although not calling itself by that name as a sanctuary city, has enacted some policies. A sanctuary city limits its cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, generally by restricting local police and resources from assisting ICE, and to encourage immigrants to report crimes and access services without fear of deportation. Erica, would you let us know about Roseville and what's happening there?
Yeah, so I forget the year. I want to say it's about 8, 9 years ago. We had this discussion at the city council and with our community, and we created a policy that's very specific. You can go to our website and pull it up, but basically it says, long and short, that the role of local government is not immigration. That's not what we do. And so it's very clear in that policy that we do not cooperate with ICE in immigration matters. So that is their role. Our role is building trust with our community it's hard to do both of those, to have those intersect. So that policy has been in place for a number of years now, and that's what our officers follow. It doesn't mean we can obstruct them. It just means that's not our role. We're not involved in immigration, and we, quite frankly, are that's not part of what our mission is. They have a mission, we've got a mission, and those really do not overlap. So there is a specific policy that we've got that's on our website, and that came from community input, that came from our leaders at the time, and that's what we continue to follow.
That was enacted in 2017. Foresight. There you go. Okay, how's that? I did my homework. Ha! Now I lost my question. So difficult question. This is from somebody in the audience. Very difficult question. Can there be no interference when an official is seen ready to shoot a demonstrator? Shades of George Floyd.
Or Mr.
I don't know that there's any answer to that question. I think that's a philosophical question that we all have to grapple with in terms of what can an individual do? Any comments by anybody on the panel?
I'll just add that, I mean, obviously, as a police officer, if we see a crime being committed, we're going to step in. It gets to a much more difficult position when you have a law enforcement federal officer, unless it was clear cut that they were going to assault someone or they were using just excessive force. It really does become difficult. I mean, we've had these same conversations, but obviously, if we see somebody that we believe there's an excessive or unreasonable amount of force being used, we're going to do everything we can to stop that. But these are just some interesting times of how does that happen when it's another law enforcement officer? It's very easy in our department. We are very clear in our department that if you see another member using force, our state law is very clear what you need to do. Officers are expected to intervene. They're required to intervene. They're required to document that. But again, when you're dealing with a federal agency, it's much more muddied waters than it would be, for instance, if we went on a scene with St. Paul. Very clear cut how we would handle that. We would certainly intercede, but these are just different times with different levels of government.
I have to comment. I saw a TikTok video last night, and it wasn't in Minnesota, I don't believe, but it was an ICE agent pulling over an immigrant driver, and the immigrant driver was an off-duty police officer, but the ICE agent was intoxicated, and so the immigrant police officer ended up arresting the ICE agent. So, just saying. And this was body cam footage.
Topsy-turvy times at minimum. From the comments that I've heard so far today, I get, in one sense, a bit of optimism because it seems to me that citizens in general are looking to their schools and finding support in community. And they're looking to their local law enforcement agencies and finding support and community. We've always looked to the ACLU.
Yes.
Panelists, would you like to comment on that?
I'll just reiterate, because most of my day is interacting with people of color over and over and over. I can't tell you how many times I've heard parents, community members saying, oh my gosh, our whole white community really cares about us. Look at this. Look at Minnesota. That has come through. I bet I heard that 10 times last week from different people within different communities of color. And so I think that's really, really hopeful, right? I think if you talk about the deep wounds, the racial divides, pre and post George Floyd, the tension with local law enforcement, if there's one thing that I have seen as a silver lining is that there's a real interesting feeling when it's an external threat. We're all Minnesota. And I feel like that has really been coming through. And I will tell you that message is being seen loud and clear within our communities of color. And it's pretty beautiful actually to see.
I would agree. It's been great to see people coming out to support one another, to see the community coming together. From a police perspective, it's hard because we have spent so much time trying to build trust. And you can just see, as much as we're out there saying, but we're not ICE and we're not going to do this. We know there are people who are not calling 911 because they're scared that what's going to happen when we respond. And that's heartbreaking, especially when that's something that was part of our mission and something that was part of what we were really working is improving that trust in the community. And this just feels like it's just tearing it away, especially with some communities, some populations in our community. And so that's the one piece that, although I'm hopeful seeing everyone coming together, you do wonder how this affects people that are now scared to be able to call 911, whether they need, somebody's experiencing a medical emergency or they just need help. And now they're scared to make that call, not knowing how it's going to end.
There's a lot of jokes about Minnesota nice out there. But what I think we've seen is that Minnesotans are kind and they are compassionate and they are helping their neighbors. That's just going to have to continue until this stops. I think I've heard so many stories from people out there observing and protesting and putting their bodies on the line for their neighbors that it's really wonderful. The stories are awful. Countless stories of people being followed to their homes by ICE, having guns pointed at them, arrests, threats, awful, awful things said to people. And overwhelmingly, what I hear from the people talking to me is that they are going to keep doing it anyway. Because even though it is scary, it's important. And so, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, watching videos of people out in the streets in downtown Minneapolis at 10 o'clock trying to prevent ICE from getting any sleep.
Yeah.
I love it. It gives me life.
Costumes important, but
Oh, they do. Oh, they do. Yeah. There's a shark with a tambourine and a frog with an accordion. And it's amazing. And I think as Minnesotans, we have, at least in many parts of Minnesota, we have embraced our diversity, our immigrant neighbors, and at least I hope that that is how our immigrant neighbors feel. And I feel like I'm going off on a tangent again here. But I do have a lot of hope for the future. I do see, look at the room here. It's full. So many people have signed up to do observer training, and so many people are signing up to buy people groceries and bring kids to school. And so we all just have to keep doing that. Obviously, it is very scary right now. It's hard. But I mean, I'm going to choose to have faith. I'm going to choose to be optimistic and enjoy being a Minnesotan and being proud. We know how to handle ICE.
I have this question from the audience, but I think Alicia just answered it for us. The question said, due process is great and all, but what if people don't follow it? Can we do if that happens? I think Alicia just told us what we do. And there's a lot we can do. I think I've run out of my scenario list because it seems anticlimactic for me to throw out some scenarios about the use of marijuana or, you know, it just doesn't make it right now. Talk to me after this is over, Alicia. But I would ask each of our panelists if they want to say something just in closing briefly.
Thank you for being here. We need people to be part of the solution. I don't have an answer. I've spent a lot of nights and days being asked, what do we do? And not having answers is hard. I'm used to having solutions. So, but it is coming to an event like this on a Sunday afternoon and seeing how many people are here. This is what we need to do. It's about community. So I'm leaving hopeful, but wish I had better answers.
Yeah, as a lawyer, it's really hard to say, I don't know. I'm supposed to be the smart one. But it's okay to say I don't know. And I think it's okay for all of us to say that. And all that we can do is try to work together and to come to these and to talk to each other and to figure out what we're going to do. And I'll be looking at I've got an intake line with people who are reporting violations of people's rights, and I'm going to be looking at them and I'm going to be evaluating them, and I'm talking to more people, and I want all of you to talk to me, and I want everybody to all be talking about what's happening and documenting and observing. And then we can figure out what we're going to do next. Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for listening to me. Disrespected illustrious panelist. I don't know. Is that true still? I've talked about F-bombs and marijuana, so I'm gonna give it to Christine.
Well, I'll just add in, same thing as a superintendent, people look to you for the answers. And I was on a Zoom with all of our administrators, principals, and everybody else. And I just said, I don't know what to do right now. We have to figure this out together. And it is okay to say, I don't know what to do. This is something we've never experienced before. But I am going to just close with the fact that I've never, ever been so proud to be a Minnesotan right now. I really mean that. I see it in every interaction I'm having. It's pretty incredible, actually. So thank you, everyone, for being here. This is so heartening just to see a room full of people on a Sunday afternoon.
I'll go back to those two little boys that were playing Monopoly and said, it's not fair. It's not. But what can you do? You try and establish the rules. Feed them, hug them.
Tell your young adult children not to throw snowballs at ice, as I did last night with one of mine on text message. Please don't do that. I'm like, Boston Massacre started with snowballs. Let's not go there right now, people. Yes.
Thank you so much. What a great panel.
Suppose I could use the microphone. Next month, February 15th, there is another Constitution and but it's in regard to freedom of speech. So I just wanted to let you know that that's coming up here from 1:30 to 3, February 15th. Thank you. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, just a couple other things too first of all, I wanted to let you know we had 28 people online as well. So 65 in the room, 28 people online. So that's a good group. And yes, we have a program right back here in February. And then in March, we have one over at the Roseville Library. That's a Tuesday evening, the 24th, and that is on election security. So we have speakers from the Secretary of State office, Ramsey County elections, and then a very experienced head election judge. So they'll be talking to us about that. Yeah, and then, one thing, I think some of us, was anyone have gone to a Monarca training? So that is something that you can do. That gives you some idea of how things work and what's okay and what isn't. So those are, go out to monarca.org and you can find that training. Yeah, Carol?
Another thing you can do if you're from Roseville, tomorrow night, the Roseville City Council is addressing some of these issues. So show up or attend online and give City Council your feedback.
Monarca has got a little flyer thing that they
Oh.
put up that says know your rights.
Yeah, great.
I have one copy.
Yeah, you'll make you feel better. Yesterday's Monarca Day, there were 1,000 people there.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, we did. We had 1,000 people.
They're filled up all through January. There's no open ones.
So just for those that don't know, that training is
I saw
for
they were all full.
citizens and how to observe, how to be constitutional observers of ICE activities.
Yep.
And I will mention ACLU has been kind enough to let us expropriate a bunch of their constitutions. There's some on the table for anybody who wants their constitution. Again, appreciate all of you for being here, and we are.
We have
strong
one other
citizens.
person, just Susan, if you just,
Thank you so much. I'm Cheryl Bailey from the St. Paul League, and the Roseville League has been fantastic in co-sponsoring our programs. Next Sunday at 1:30 on Zoom, if you look up on our website, you can find on the St. Paul League. We're also doing immigration. We'll have someone from immigration rights, a lawyer talk, and Joanne Ellis, many of you know from the East Side, who has been an observer, and we had all of this planned before Wednesday's killing. So next Sunday, 1:30 on Zoom, St. Paul League. And thank you guys for doing this program.
thank you for letting us know.
Thank
Okay, I
you.
think we are wrapped for today. Thank you so much.